All right, so now we're ready to get into texturing. So I find that in Lumion, the textures are typically, the most important textures are glass, grass, and water. Those are the ones that like really shine through in Lumion as being obviously awesome. And then we're going to also refine some of these other textures such as this brick and this wood. And so the way that this process works is, first off, I just want to kind of adjust my sun so it's kind of shining on the front of the building. That's going to help me, let's see, adjust our heading to, this way when I'm working on these textures I can kind of see how they're affected by the sun. So I'll use that on the weather tab and just kind of adjust these dials here to get that sun shining on. All right, so we want to add materials, and the way that it works is that you texture everything up in your 3D modeling program, such as SketchUp in this case, but it's the same workflow for any 3D modeling program. And once it comes into Lumion, you're just going to swap the textures for Lumion textures. Now that could either mean choosing a Lumion preset, or it could mean converting this image into a Lumion texture. And that is typically the way that I work. So what I'll do is I'll go to my Materials tab. So it's one of the four over here on the left-hand side. I click on Materials, and notice that now as I move my cursor around, I can select these different materials that I've applied in SketchUp. So first off, let's go for glass. I'm going to click once on this blue glass. You can see that it's soaking up the SketchUp name. I'll click once on that, and that opens up my material library. Now, 9 times out of 10, I just want to use a preset. So I'll click on glass, and now this is Lumion glass. So we're good to go there. I can click on the properties of the glass, and I can adjust the transparency, maybe dial it down a little bit, because I haven't really built out the inside of this model. The design challenge was really just a quick sketch, and so I don't want to like focus and like really see through to the inside. So we'll just adjust our transparency there. Next, I'm going to click on this other glass. This is more of like a frosted glass. I'll click once there. Again, I choose my glass material, and then I'll just adjust my transparency. We'll just move that down. Looks good. You can always click on RGB to kind of tint the glass, adjust the colors, but I think for our purposes here, that looks pretty good. So there's our glass. That's all good. And then the other thing we want to work on is our grass. Now, I'm not sure how important this is going to be for this rendering, but for grass, all I have to do is click once on my grass from SketchUp, and now we have landscape. So again, on this custom preset, which comes up by default, I just click on landscape. Now what that does is that grass is now a Lumion landscape. So what I'm going to do is check this box, and this is important. Whenever you make any adjustments to materials, you always got to click on Save. If you click on the X or tap Escape, I think it'll just kind of kill those changes. So we're going to say OK and save that. Now we're going to hop back into the Landscape tab, and I'm going to turn on my 3D grass. So here's grass, and I can click this power button and turn on my 3D grass. Now if I get a little bit lower to the ground, you can see I can adjust my grass height and maybe the grass size a little bit. It seems like a little bigger grass size tends to look best look better when you're up above. For a while there, I always wanted to make it as small as possible and as tall as possible. And it just seems like it does better if you make the grass a little bigger, kind of shows a little bit thicker, and I don't know, just better look for animations and renderings. So all right, so that's cool. There, we're all set up with our 3D grass, and that adds some nice realism. What other textures do we need to add? So I said glass, grass, and water. We really don't have any water in this model, but let's talk now about some more custom materials. So for instance, this brick. So if I come over here and get real close to my brick, and I wanted my shadows casting down because we're going to adjust the bump map, and it'll be a little bit easier to see what happens there. So what I'll do is go back to my Materials tab. I just hover around and I'll click on the brick. Now the brick, this is most textures I go with the standard. Now all that means is that it's going to take this SketchUp texture and convert it to a Lumion material. Now you can see that standard material has this reflectivity and glossiness. Well, that's not really correct for brick. So we're just going to dial down our reflectivity. So you can see it's all in real time. And our glossiness, we're not going to do that either. But we do want to have some relief. And so in order to do that, I need to click on this button here, Create Normal Map. When I click on that, it adds a normal map, like a bump map, to that texture. You can click it again to flip it back and forth, whether it's basically the black and the white, whether it's going in or out. And then I'm going to dial up the relief on this. Let's flip it. All right, so I want to flip it this way. That looks good. And you can see it's kind of working better over here, looking a little bit more obvious. So when I go down and up, you get more and less relief. Now, it's a subtle thing, but really that adds a ton of realism and depth and texture to your rendering. So it doesn't have to be on every texture, but for this brick, I think it's pretty nice to add that depth to it. So, all you have to do is make it a standard material, and then just knock down your gloss and reflectivity, and then give it some depth, some relief. All right, so let's do the same thing down here. I'll come over here, and I'll click on this. I'll go to my standard material. I click once there. I don't want to have any of that gloss or reflectivity, but I do want to have a decent amount of relief. And remember, in order to get this relief to work, I have to click on Create Normal Map. I click that once, and now I can adjust the relief here. So again, the way that the sun is shining, we're not getting a ton of that relief. So I could either adjust the sun, or maybe I'll just come over here. You can see that relief showing up. Since the sun is so bright over here, we're not really getting it. But we'll just dial that down a bit. Maybe this one really doesn't need quite as much. And then again, you can flip the normal map, so you can see how that changes the look. I think I like it like that. That looks good. And that looks pretty good. All right, so there's our wood and our brick, and we've added those that relief to it. That's kind of a new feature in Lumion 5. And we want to swap a few other textures too. We can go in here and we'll click on the asphalt. That's always a good one. We can go to outdoor, and there's an asphalt category. And I usually pick like the darkest, blackest asphalt. There we go. Looking good. So you can see that's kind of all set up for you. It's just got a nice repeating tiled texture. Already has some properties assigned to it. All right, and then some other textures that are easy to swap with the presets are concrete. So I just click on my concrete, I click on outdoor, and then I go to the concrete collection. This first one is pretty decent if I remember right. So that's just kind of good for typical concrete sidewalks, stuff like that. Cool. So that is the typical process here. You just click on materials and swap them for Lumion materials. So you can go as far into that as you like. I mean, if you want to texture everything, that's all good. If you just want to hit the main ones like glass, grass, and water, that's all good too. So you can always evolve your presentation as well. So you just get your rendering set up and maybe refine them later. So remember, it's really important to click on Save. That's this checkbox in the bottom right. I'll click Save. And I think we're good with texturing right now. So, if you want to, as mentioned, like these tutorials are, the best way to learn Lumion is through guided exploration. I'm showing you how to do some of this stuff, but I'd suggest that you just go through and kind of goof around. Maybe click on the metal here, or the mullions. Go to outdoor, and you've got metal. And then you can click on one of these other metal painted. And if you double click on one, it will bring you to the properties here. You can click on colorization, darken it up, mess with things in here. So you really just want to go through and, what we just did, we're just going to mess with, you've learned the techniques, and now you can go through and like really try it yourself. That's where you really learn. So anyway, I'll end the tutorial there, and check out the next one, and we'll keep moving forward.